So today we turned on the electric for the first time in this cabin and we hung up some curtains. As you can see, the kitchen is pretty bare bones, pretty rustic. So we're gonna eventually try to refinish that. It does have this amazing wood-fired stove, but it was never really hooked up by the looks of it. So we will probably, unfortunately, get rid of that since it also has this electric stove and they'll only be here every once in a while. It does have this amazing fridge though. The bedroom. So we got the curtains in there. It's got some cool older furniture. It's got a little closet space. The wood stove got it nice and warm as it hadn't been heating here at all. As you can see, might have not measured correctly for that, so we'll work on getting new curtains for there, but that's okay. We have the curtains here and here in our living room, which eventually will get all set up nice and cozy and things in place. Originally, there was a really old, worn leather couch we've already swapped out for a futon so that when our kiddos or other visitors come stay here, they'll have a place to stay as well. It's already looking nice. It's properly cold on March 2nd. It's 25 below, 9:03 a.m. and we are starting the process of refinishing the inside of my parents' cabin, which I'll show you in just a minute, but my hands are freezing from trying to unload. So what you see here is my parents' cabin that they recently purchased, and this is primarily for their visits when they come here to see us and their grandchildren. So it doesn't really have much of a kitchen. This is it. This is what came with it. These little board makeshift covered things, and this electric stove, and then this amazing wood-fired one, but there is nothing for it to vent out, so we probably won't be keeping that. But what we will be doing is removing that, removing this, and installing all of these kitchen cabinets and pieces that you see here that we have acquired on Marketplace for $300, and we're going to be redoing their kitchen. But before that, we're going to be covering this terrible drywall and wallpapered wall. So that's our project for today. That's where we're going to start, is covering the wall and making it a little bit nicer than working on the kitchen and really turning this place around. Yes, somebody had been living here for 20 years like this. That's all they need, but we want to kind of give a little bit more comforts of home for them. So this is our next project that we are taking on this month, so stay tuned. Also, like you saw, it's 25 below, so this obviously isn't heated, so it's 25 below in here. So we're starting to get the wood stove going so that it'll be a little warmer when we come back with some of the materials. So they have this Fisher wood stove in here. It really puts off the heat. It just takes a while to bring it up from 25 below, as you've seen with our cabin adventures. So we'll be doing the same here. So this is it. They're cute, cozy, one bedroom, dry cabin in Alaska.
A shocking turn of events. What we're looking for isn't here, so you got to find someone. And I'm sure they're gonna have to get a forklift. It'll take 2 hours to get this stuff.
And this happens almost every time we come. This is always our experience when we're building our cabin. They said they have 104 in stock. Well, we're looking for Shiplap. This is not the Shiplap. This is the bead panel, which is up here. And then there's no Shiplap to be found. So now we get to go have fun, and it always leads to these projects taking longer and longer and longer. So maybe we aren't doing shiplap walls today and working on the kitchen. Instead, we're going to be building an outhouse because although they have 156 in stock, they're buried outside. That is not good. And they said they don't know when they'll be able to get them and get them on the shelves. So when it says it has one thing but it doesn't, you move on to the next thing. That's just a little bit about life in Alaska. Today we try again to work on the walls of my parents' cabin when they come visit. So here it is before we get started. Some lovely wallpaper. Very minimal kitchen. We'll see what we can turn this into. Step 1 is removing everything from the walls, so all of the outlets, covers, the light fixture, and the curtains that we had previously installed before we can get started. So first things first, we are taking off all of the outlet covers, and then we're trying to remove this light fixture from the wall, but we need to see if we have pliers in our truck because it's on there very tight before we can really get going. Now that we have the right tools, we can take off the light fixture, and yes, we did turn off the breaker first before we got started. Next up, we started with the wall behind the refrigerator, so we measured where the outlets were, and then we notched it out, and then we figured out that we aren't exactly sure where the studs are or how this was built because it is drywall over a log cabin side, so we weren't sure exactly what they did in order to get the electrical back there. So it got a little bit interesting, and we decided since we are covering everything, the best idea was to poke a hole and then proceed to knock it out of the wall to figure out exactly where the studs are. So that's precisely what we did because we are very accurate like that, and why not start with a little bit of destruction before we start our cover-up process. All right, so to find the studs, this is how we use our stud finder. I use my stud to find it by ruining the drywall that we're about to cover. So turns out there are, in fact, studs in here, probably about 16 inches apart, as we'd expect, much to our surprise. Turns out these studs are 24 inches in between, but now we've figured that out, and I think we've got an idea where our electrical is ran, so we can kind of move forward. So now we're going to start our cuts to go around the outlet, in theory. We got one marked. My dad said, I thought the stud was helping you. So, now let him know, little did he know. He is the one who found it. The stud. After we measured where the outlet was, we then drilled a hole and proceeded to cut with a jigsaw to make the hole for the outlet. And then after we placed it there, we measured where the other outlet was by placing it up against there, and then measured exactly where we need to cut out around the window frame. And then we made that cut. And finally, lastly, we installed the first panel after making all of the measurements and cuts using our nail gun. And that's why we were trying to figure out exactly where the studs were in order to attach it. And then also try to avoid all of the electrical because that wouldn't be good. So in the end, installing the first one was a success. Essentially, we did exactly the same thing for the upper panel above the one that we just installed down below. We measured and then we made our cuts, and then we held it up there and installed it once again with the nail gun. We had to kind of be creative in the space that we were working in because it was a little tight to do everything, but after we got that section up, it started really looking better, like this was going to come together as everybody envisioned, or so we hoped. After we got the first bottom and upper panel on, we started to get the hang of making the appropriate measurements and the cuts and installing it along the way. And repeat. So we would measure and cut and test and measure and cut and place it up and attach it using the nail gun. And once that side was done, it started to look a little bit better. One wall complete. It's not perfect, but it's a cabin. There's gonna be obviously outlets to make it better. We're gonna put on some trim boards, and there'll be cabinets, so. Moving on to the next wall was slightly easier as the outlets were set at the top and it was relatively level through there, so we were able to just measure and cut for that outlet to get the bottom on quickly. The top did pose a little bit more challenging to go around everything like the light fixture, but we did manage to make that one come together pretty quickly as well. My husband does a great job using the jigsaw and lining everything up. Take a look at what we've got done so far. You can kind of see making progress. Making progress over here. Got one side done, part of the other. Got a lot to go around, so this part will probably take us a little longer. Woo! And I was most certainly right. This next section of the wall took us literally forever. If you'll watch, we have to set it down, measure, make another cut, set it down, measure. We did this like 12 times because the floor is not flat or level there. So there was this really odd hump that we had to try to account for, but keep all of the lines of the shiplap still in line. So at this point, we've already been working on this for about 5-6 hours at least, and we're just kind of over it. My husband was getting really tired at this point, making measurements and cuts and measurements and cuts. And once we finally got it close enough, we called it good. We got it installed, and I could not convince him to go any more for this day. As I said, it was about 7 hours at that point, and he was just done. But we got a lot of progress. Today's progress, this board was giving us a little bit of trouble because it's not flat along the wood at the bottom. It's shifted over time, so we need to keep trimming so that we could line them up over here as best we could. But we've made progress. I think it'll look better when it's all trimmed out and cabinets are up and everything else. But overall, it's coming along. All right, so we couldn't put any nail here because there's no stud behind it, so we have glue. So this is how you do it. You just kind of squeeze it, and it's gonna land somewhere in there, you know? And then you just stick that baby up against there. Problem's mostly solved.
Well, we're back at it today. It's been a few weeks between trips and work and everything else since we worked on this. So the first step of any home improvement project is crack a beer. Got the wood stove going. It's warming up in here pretty quick since this isn't heated when we're not here. So we're going to finish the couple pieces that still need the panels, and then we're going to caulk in between the panels, cover the nail holes, and I think we should easily be able to accomplish that today. Maybe start putting cabinets in place.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, cheers. Let's do this. Another day, another panel. So obviously this section was a little bit more difficult because we had that support beam to go around. So we did it extremely technical. So we held it up there and I measured where the beam landed on each side and measured about how deep I thought that hole needed to go that we needed to cut to be able to slide it in, and a few trials and errors and a little bit of adjustment, and it ended up working out pretty dang well. And then the panels actually ended up also lining up along the sides as well. Added some glue this time and installed it with the nails to hold it in place, and continued on to the next section so that we could finish the walls. This next section, I commandeered our boys to get some help so that they could hold the panels in place where I had placed the glue so that those would end up sticking, just so that it was a little bit more firm together, and then we carried on our panels. Wrapping up the last section wasn't all too difficult. We did just have to measure and kind of piece it together, and then after that we were done with the walls. Fitting in the last one was a bit of a puzzle piece to make sure that it lined up perfectly, but once we got that all done, take a look. All of the wall paneling is complete, and that's a wrap for this phase of it.